Hi, my name is Rachel Massey, and I work with ClinicalTrials.gov Registration and Results Reporting for the CTSC. Today, I'm going to be going through a user's guide that can help you when you are registering or for general questions. So this is what the site is going to look like when you are first logging into the PRS system, which is the Protocol Registration and Results System. That's what ClinicalTrials.gov calls the system that you're going to enter the information into, and they will then take that and review it. And then once they approve it, they will post it to the public-facing site. So you will need to know your organization's name, your username and password. Please note that the organization name is case sensitive and site specific. You need to contact your organization's PRS administration to get this information. If you have any questions, please visit the CTSC website for a list of all the PRS administrators. So this is just showing you that there's tons of help. There are guided tutorials that you can take. There are question and answer things. There's lots of different information on the help guide. So if you just press this help from the drop-down menu, there's lots of different things that are there to help you with doing the registration part of the entry. So just a few things when you're getting started. Again, you will need to have your PRS account, and you can either do that by contacting your PRS administrator. If you don't know who that is, there's a website, register at ClinicalTrials.gov, that you can reach out to and they'll be able to help you. If you want to walk through registration, I would be happy to do that. I am not going to be able to provide institution-specific guidance, but I can help with overall CT.gov questions. Please note that registration can take up to 2 hours to complete. You can save and come back later. You don't have to, once you start, you don't have to do it all in one sitting. No, always make sure that you hit that save button at the bottom of the screen to make sure you save your progress. Once you have entered all your required data, there's going to be a green entry complete button. You're going to want to make sure you hit that so that it'll go to the responsible party so that they can release so that ClinicalTrials.gov can do their review and give you the NCT number. So what happens after ClinicalTrials.gov reviews it is they will either assign your NCT number or they will come back with comments. Please note that comments are required to be addressed within 15 calendar days. Records are required to be updated annually or more frequently as changes occur. So I'm going to show you in a few more slides where to do this, where they record it. It's the record verification date. So anytime you're in the record, just make sure you bump this to the current month and year. So this is what it's going to look like when you first log in. And these are some quick little places to start a new record. There's 2 ways you can do it, the new record button or this drop down button here. Please note that the PRS beta system is getting an upgrade and modernization, and they will be switching over in July of this year, and I will provide updated slides when the time comes. The old system will still be available for years to come, but when you first log in, it will direct you automatically to the PRS, the new home page. Anytime you want to edit an existing record, you just click this open link right beside it. This is kind of important over here. Any problems that the record has, it's going to flag it here and it's going to be in red so you can know what you need to go in and update. So the next thing is a record status page, and this is just going to show you who the record owner is. The record owner is the primary contact. If there is any questions, if they have any, if they want to have, if they issue comments, this is the person that they're going to reach out to. The access list is anybody that has edit rights. So you can put whoever you want on the access list, but again, the record owner is going to be the primary contact. The initial release date, this is the date that displays on the public site, and this is really important for any applicable clinical trials or ICMJE. And this is the first date that it was released to ClinicalTrials.gov. Entry complete, this is what I was talking about earlier. Once all edits and data has been entered here, you just need to make sure and hit this button every time to send it to the responsible party to approve and release. There's lots of links at the top that are going to be helpful for the record. The spelling, if you want to check for spelling, you just have to make sure and click this button. There's a preview that will allow you to view the full record in a PDF form. And then if you want to make edits, again, you just click this open link and it'll allow you to go section by section. And these are the sections that will be in the record. Errors have to be addressed before you can submit the record. So anytime you see an error, that's something that you need to go in and fix before you are allowed to submit it. Warnings are not required to be addressed, but they are really encouraged that you do look at them for clarity and address them if possible. A note is just a potential issue, and just review and make sure that nothing needs to be done for those. Next, we have the study description page, and so this is going to be where you put the unique protocol ID, and this is your organization's preferred ID, so you need to reach out to them. Usually it's the IRB number, but just make sure you check with them. These two help and definitions button at the top, they can be clicked to give you more information on this section. And these are at the top of every page. They're helpful to get the definitions of which each one of these mean, or just more help in general. When you are finished entering this information, you're going to click the continue button at the bottom of the screen and it's going to advance to the next screen. Anytime you see a red asterisk, please make sure that you fill that in because it is a required field and you have to be able to, you have to include that before you can submit the record. So once you enter that brief title, then the next thing is going to be this section, and this is going to pop up and it's just going to let you know what the following pages are going to be, and you can just hit OK when you're ready to go on. The next page that's going to pop up is the study identification page, and this is going to be where you enter the brief title, the official title, and any secondary IDs. For the brief title, you can put whatever you want, and this is going to display in the search results on the public site. Make sure that it has enough information that people will be able to find your study. The official title needs to match the title that was submitted to IRB. For any NIH-funded studies, you need to add the secondary ID here, and that will be the grant number. So just a note here, sometimes it can take weeks for the numbers to show up in the system. So if you get an error that the grant number is not showing up, you can leave it blank and come back and try again in a couple weeks. So this is what I was talking about earlier, the record verification date. This is where we want to bump it up every time we're in the records, the current month and year. This is how ClinicalTrials.gov records the records to make sure that they're verified annually. So again, just kind of resets the clock when you come in here. The overall recruitment status is a drop-down list, and you can click through the different recruitment statuses there, and if you need help, you can look at this status definition and it will tell you what all of the definitions are according to ClinicalTrials.gov. And here are just the definitions that they have. It's just the different choices: not yet recruiting, and so on. And they just tell you exactly what each one of those means. So this is the next thing, is the study start date. So you want to either enter an anticipated date, and this is when you think that the study will open for recruitment, or an actual date, and this is the enrollment of the first participant. Just a note here, you can always push it out a little bit. So say you want to start recruiting in April, but you're not really sure, you can always push that date out to like May 1st to give you some time, because once April is over, you're going to come on the problem report. So we just want to make sure, that we put this date as something that we anticipate to start, and then you can always update it later as needed. For the anticipated dates, you are not required to have a day, but it is recommended. So next we come to the primary and study completion dates. We are going to talk about this more in length later, but just a quick note that completion dates are not based on data analysis, database lock, publication, or IRB closure. They are based on data collection. So we want to make sure that we know that the primary completion date is the final date of data collection for your primary outcome measures, and the study completion date is that final date of data collection for your any secondary outcomes and adverse events. So now we'll just talk about some little reminders. If required, results for the primary outcome measures are due within 1 year of the completion dates. So this is very important that we get the completion dates right, because you will be expected to report results based on those completion dates. So if you look at the above example, the primary completion date is September 1st, 2023. So results are due no later than midnight on September 1st, 2024. So, and then all of the other results have to be entered no later than December 1st, 2024. So it's 1 year post each of these completion dates. Here are just some examples. If we have a primary outcome measure of a change in pain, it's measured by the VAS, and we have a time frame of baseline in 12 weeks. The primary completion date would be when the last subject completes the VAS. So this is going to be the subject's 12-week visit, the last subject that completes the 12-week visit. And for the study completion date, it's going to be when the last patient completes their 16-week visit, because that's when we're getting the back depression inventory. If AE collection extends beyond 16 weeks, then the study completion date will be the final date of AE collection for the entire study. So the next we have the sponsors and collaborators page. We're going to have the responsible party, and this is the person that is responsible for entering the study into ClinicalTrials.gov and who is going to be responsible for results reporting. At different sites, they do it differently, so you need to ask your PRS administrator which to use, and these are the different choices: sponsor, principal, investigator, sponsor, investigator. The sponsor should pre-populate as your organization when you log in, so you shouldn't have to do anything here. The collaborators, anybody that provides support for funding, design, implementation, data analysis, can be listed here. If the study is NIH funded, you have to include the NIH office in this collaborator section. The next page is the oversight page. Again, if you want to look at the definitions link or this link that has the applicable ClinicalTrials.gov or applicable clinical trial checklist, this is going to tell you if this is a applicable clinical trial study, a drug, biologic, or device. So you will just answer these questions about drugs and devices. If you have an IND or an IDE, you're going to want to mark it here. If you have submitted an IND or an IDE but do not yet have the number, you're going to want to put no, and then you'll come back and enter it later once you have that IND IDE number. The human subject protection review. So you're going to enter the IRB information for your site. We'll go over that in the next slide. 801 here, this 801 clinical trial, that is equal to applicable clinical trials. So the human subjects protection review, this is what it's going to look like, and you're going to put in the board name, affiliation, and the contact information for your IRB. And again, you can just check with your PRS administrator for more information on that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to enter the study description. So this is where you enter a brief summary about what your study is about. ClinicalTrials.gov does not like the use of pronouns, so please do not use I or we. You can use the investigator or subjects. Also, just make sure that you describe the study in lay terms. So we don't want to include our entire protocol here. We just want to tell people what the study is about. I always suggest that people use the consent form because it's already written in lay terms. The detailed description is optional, and you do not have to put a detailed description, but you can if you want to include more information. Again, please do not include your entire protocol. The conditions page is next, and for the conditions or the focus of the study, we want to look at the overall condition disease that the study is focusing on. And then the next thing we have here is keywords. You can always add an additional condition because you can only have one per line. Keywords are going to help people find your study, so we want to make sure that we have really good keywords. We don't want to have 75 of them. We want to have about, between 1 to 5 really good keywords that's going to use to describe your study. Next, we have the interventional study design page, and this is going to be where you're going to put the primary purpose of the intervention, the study phase. You only use a study phase if it involves a drug or biologic. If it does not, always put NA here. And I know that's different for NIH because they have that phase, for all, even behavioral trials, but just make sure that for ClinicalTrials.gov purposes, the study phase is only when using drugs or biologics. The interventional study model, again, these are drop downs. If you need to know what each one of them means, hit this definitions link and it will tell you which each one of them is according to ClinicalTrials.gov. The number of arms, this is how you're going to report out your data, so make sure that you have the correct number of arms, and then any masking that's going to be using. And then your allocation, randomized or not randomized, you'll always put NA for single arm studies. And then you want to have the enrollment, and this is going to be the number of participants that you are anticipating. And then once you actually finish enrollment, you will just update this number and then click actual. Next, we have the ARMS page. Again, this is where you are reporting your results. So we want to make sure that we have the ARM title of the different interventions that we're using. You have to have an ARM title and an ARM type, and it's a drop down, so you will just use what makes the most sense. So in this example, we have the ARM title of Removerall and then an ARM title of placebo. We have an ARM type of experimental for the drug, and then we have no intervention for the placebo. And then you can put in the ARM description, it will just tell you what is happening. So the next thing is the interventions page, and this is where you're actually going to define the interventions that you're using in the different arms. So if you see this, we have the Removerall drug, and then we have the placebo that is listed as a drug. And then you just, again, Removerall placebo tablet or 15 mg tablets. And then you're going to cross-reference the experimental that is using the drug Removerall, and then the placebo comparator is using the drug of the placebo. So this is what it'll look like. So next, we're going to go to outcome measures. This is really the meat of the record. This is where ClinicalTrials.gov is very, very picky in what they want. So just some tips here. The protocol and statistical analysis plan is going to be required to be submitted with results and will be made public. Some redactions are allowed, but they're limited. So just make sure that anything that you put in the protocol is reflected in the record. So again, you must include all primary and secondary outcomes that are listed in the protocol in the ClinicalTrials.gov record. Tertiary or exploratory outcomes are optional and not required to be put in. You need to label outcomes as primary or secondary in the record the same way as they are labeled in the protocol. You can have more than one primary outcome and more than one secondary outcome if needed. So for the title, what you should always have what you are measuring and how. You need to include the metric. So if you have a scale, a score, a number, a percentage, you need to be clear and concise, no verbs. You want to say maximum tolerated dose of drug A. And that's preferable over to determine the maximum tolerated dose of drug A in patients with breast cancer. Clear, concise, you don't need a whole bunch of extra filler. You only can have one measure per outcome. So for example, you can't say all-cause mortality, hospitalizations, and ER visits as one separate outcome. You would have to have 3 different outcomes. You would have to have an all-cause mortality outcome, hospitalizations, or ER. The only exception to this is if you have a composite score, if you are combining more than one thing to get one overall score. Just a caution here, you are going to have to explain in the description how you are getting a composite score. So this is the next thing we're going to talk about is the time frame. You're going to include the specific time point that the data was collected. So when we're using a specific time point, we can't say during hospitalization only. We have to say during hospitalization, approximately 5 days. Don't say end of study, but rather say end of study up to 12 weeks. You should only have one time point in your time frame. The only exception is if you are measuring a change. And if you are measuring a change, you must have change in the title. So for an example, we have change in pain scores as measured by the VAS, and we have a time frame of baseline 3 months and 6 months. Excuse me. So we are making sure to include all the time points that we are measuring this VAS. If you are not measuring a change, each time point would have to be its own outcome measure. So for example, down here, whereas before I included them all with that change in the title, down here I have the pain as measured by the VAS at the different time points, baseline 3 months, 6 months. So in the description, you want to include the range and the meaning of any scores that you are using. So this has an example of the VAS is a 10-item questionnaire ranking the severity of pain. Scores are measured on a 5-point Likert scale, with 5 being extreme pain and 1 being no pain at all. You want to make sure that you are clearly defining what the scale, score, or measure is. Descriptions are not required. It's just used to clarify what is measured and how it is measured. So next we're going to talk about some examples. We're going to talk about some good examples and some bad examples. So the first example we have is to determine the effect of removerall and pain in adults. We have a time frame of baseline in 12 weeks. So the title is not great because we don't really understand, it's not in clear, concise terms. A better outcome measure would be change in pain as measured by the VAS, because this is telling us how exactly what we are measuring and how we're measuring it. We are measuring pain by the VAS. And then in the description, we have what the VAS is. And then the time frame is baseline in 12 weeks because there is change in the title. Another bad example of an outcome measure would be to assess the safety of removerall, and then the time frame would be end of study. ClinicalTrials.gov will not accept this as written. They want to know, how are you assessing safety of removerall? So better outcome measure is number of participants with at least one adverse event as measured by patient report. That is how we are assessing the safety of removerall. We have a description of what we're measuring, and then for the time frame, we're not just going to say an open-ended end of study. That is not an exact time point for the time frame. So we're going to say end of study, and we're going to give it up to 24 weeks. So next we come to the eligibility page, and we're going to have, it's going to ask about the sex, which is required. It does ask about gender-based. This is not required, but it's best to fill it out. Age limits, we want a maximum minimum. There is NA no limit, so you can do that. And it's going to ask about healthy volunteers and then the eligibility criteria. Just a note here, make sure you put a little dash before each inclusion and exclusion criteria, or it won't format right, and ClinicalTrials.gov will say something. So next we have the contacts and locations page. For the central contact person, it is required to have name, first name, last name, phone number, and email. So we want to have that for each person. You can have a central contact backup. It's not required, but if there's somebody else that you want to include, you can do it here. Just a note here, I usually suggest to people that you put a study coordinator, somebody that is familiar with the study, but maybe not the PI who might be busy in clinic or may not have a chance to answer questions. So it's just somebody that is very familiar with the study that people can reach out to. The overall study official, this has to be the PI of record with the IRB. And so we want to make sure that we list this, and then you can add any co-Is that you want to by just adding a study official. The IPD sharing statement page, this is the sharing of our individual participant level data. This is not aggregate data sets. If you plan to share this level of data, you have to have your plan presented and approved by the IRB. ICMJE, which is the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, requires this question to be answered. Do not leave it as undecided. You either need to mark yes if you have already submitted and your plan approved, or no if you have not submitted it, and then you can go back and change it later if something happens. If you mark yes, just to let you know, you will be required to enter the following information. You have to say what is being shared, the time frame that you're going to share it for, and access criteria. The references page, it's going to ask for citations, links, and available IPD information. This page is not required. Some people like to have a link to their lab or any kind of links like that. So you can use this here. So ClinicalTrials.gov does not like the use of footnotes in the record, but you can use this page if you have any citations you want to list.
Hi, my name is Rachel Massey, and I work with ClinicalTrials.gov Registration and Results Reporting. And today I'm going to walk you through a live demonstration of what it looks like. So when you log in, this is what the ClinicalTrials.gov PRS system will look like. This is a test system, but the live version should look pretty similar. So you're going to put in your organization name. This will be case specific. You need to make sure you ask your PR administrator what that will be, and they will be able to tell you your username and your password. And then when you log in, this is what it's going to look like. You'll have all of your studies that have been registered and the different problems that they have, who's responsible, when that last was updated. So any trials that you are listed as a record owner or on the access list will come up right when you log in. So there are two ways to start a new record. You can do this quick links box, or you can do this drop down. So either way, you can do a new record, and then we will go here, and anything with a red asterisk is required to be entered. So we're going to put in the organization's unique study ID. Most of the time that is the IRB number, but ask your PRS administrator. The brief title, this can be anything you want it to be, but just make sure you have enough information here that people can find your study. And then the study type, interventional, observational, or expanded access. I'm going to click the continue button, and let's just do test 2. That's just telling me that I've already used test RN, so we'll have to do another unique name. So this is going to tell you what's coming on the following pages. Just press OK. And then here we have this more of the study identification. And what we're going to do is we're going to enter the official title. The official title needs to be the same title that was submitted to the IRB. We'll put that in. And then the secondary IDs, this is where you're going to put any NIH grant and contract award number, any other funding registry, and you can read those yourself. So when you add it, just a note here that sometimes it can take a while for the NIH grant number to show up in the system. So if you get an error, just leave it blank and come back and try again in a week or so. And so we're going to press continue, and the record verification date, this needs to be updated to the current month and year anytime you're in the record making changes. ClinicalTrials.gov requires that the records be updated annually for accuracy and completeness. So anytime you make edits, you just wanted to bump this, because this is how they track that the records have been updated annually by the record verification date. The overall recruitment status, if you need help knowing what the definitions are, there's that helpful definitions link, and you can see that it will tell you each and every one of the options that are available. We'll just put not yet recruiting, but you can use the drop down and use whatever is best. The study start date for anything that you list is anticipated. That is going to be when the study is planning on being enrolled, open for recruitment, and we'll put that as anticipated. When you go in and put your actual date, that's going to be the date of the first participant enrolled. You can always put this out a little bit just to give your time, so you give yourself time so you don't have to keep updating this. So, you know, you could always put June 30th if you want to start in June. You just need to make sure that when you enroll that first participant, you come in and update this so it's accurate. The completion dates, we are going to talk about these a little later after we fill out some more information, so it'll make more sense. So the next thing that we're going to come to is the sponsors and collaborators, the responsible party. So here you can choose which one you want to do, the sponsor, principal investigator, or sponsor investigator. This is really all based on your organization. So just talk to your PRS administrator about what is best for your organization. The oversight section, this is going to be where you are going to list any drugs, devices that are used in the study. So then the next thing, again, drugs, devices, it's going to let you say unapproved, uncleared. If you have that, we'll just say no for now. And then the next section is the IND section. So this is IND IDE. If you have that number, you're going to put it here. If you are requesting a new investigational drug or an investigational device exemption number and don't yet have it, we will put no, and then we can update that later once we get it. If you do have an IND or IDE, just go ahead and put it, and then you'll just add the FDA center and then the actual number. And so then the next thing is talking about expanded access. This is not required, but you can just put yes or no. And then the next thing is the human subjects protection review. You need to go ahead and submit this as not yet submitted, pending, approved, exempt, whatever it is. If it is submitted pending, that means you have submitted it to IRB but hasn't yet been approved. And then once it is approved, you will notice that this approval number will come up. Usually you just put in the study number that was submitted to the IRB. The board name, affiliation, phone, email address, that is all required. So make sure you put that in. The data monitoring committee, you can either select yes or no for that. FDA regulated intervention, this is if you have a drug or device study or biologic. The next page that we're going to come to is the study description page. This is where we're going to provide a brief summary about what the study is about. This needs to be in lay language so that people know what you're talking about. Do not copy and paste your entire scientific protocol here. Make sure that you explain what it is in a brief overview of what the study is. I like to tell people to use the consent form because you have already written it in lay terms, and that will give the people an overview of what the study is about. Make sure to not use pronouns. They do not like that. So make sure you replace I with the investigators, anything like that. Just don't use pronouns. The detailed description is not required. However, if you want to add more information about what your study is about, you can do so in the detailed description. We're going to press continue to move on. The conditions or focus of the study. So this is going to be the overall goal of what you're studying in this research study. So you can put the conditions or focus, make sure you only have one condition or focus per line. If you need to add additional, you can just put the add conditions field. The keywords, this is anything that's going to help people find your study. So I always like to tell people, you know, don't go crazy. Don't have 25 keywords. You want to have 5 like really meaningful keywords that are going to be very, and it doesn't even have to be 5. I'm just saying no more than 5 so that it's going to be very meaningful to this study. And press continue and keep going. The interventional study design, and this is where you're going to put the primary purpose. And again, if you need help, just hit the definitions and it's going to tell you what each of these are defined as per ClinicalTrials.gov. The study phase, this is only used for drugs and biologics. It's not used for anything else. I know NIH has behavioral interventions that they classify as phases, but this for ClinicalTrials.gov, you would only use for drugs and biologics. The interventional study model, these are the different choices that you have. Again, you can use the definitions link if needed. The number of arms, the masking, and the masking description, and then the allocation, if it's randomized or not randomized, you should always select NA for single arm studies. the enrollment, the number of participants that you plan to enroll. So this is going to be anticipated until you have actually enrolled your the number of participants that you're going to enroll. So next we're going to add the arms. So we can do the arm title. This is just what your arm title is, what you're doing, and then any arm description that you have. You can, for an example, if you have a drug or placebo, you would have two arms. You would have the removerall arm, and then you could just say patients receive 5 mg of removerall daily. And good thing it has spell check, so you can just go ahead and know that those are spelled incorrectly, and then you can change that, and then you would add an arm, and then you could have the placebo arm here. And then make sure you also choose the arm type. So we're going to say this is the experimental, and then this is the placebo comparator. And then we'll just say patients receive 5 mg of matching. And then we're going to press continue. And then next we're going to come to the interventions. And this is going to seem kind of redundant, especially for a straightforward drug or study that you're using. So we're going to put the intervention as that removerall. It's a fake drug name, so there'll be some pop-ups, but you don't have to use it. And then again, you're just going to say 5 mg tablet. We're going to add another intervention because placebos need to also be listed as a drug. So we are going to have the placebo listed here, and then 5 mg tablet daily. So that we have our two different interventions, and then we're going to cross-reference them. We're going to say that the removerall arm is going to get the removerall drug, the placebo arm is going to get the placebo drug. So then next we come to the meat of the record. These are the outcome measures. Any outcome that you have listed in your protocol as primary or secondary has to be included in the record. So anytime you have an exploratory or any tertiary, those do not have to be included in the record, but just know that anything listed as primary and secondary has to be included. For your outcome measures, you want to be clear and concise. You want to omit verbs. You want to just say what you're measuring and how you're measuring it. Okay, so here we're going to say pain as measured by the visual analog. And I can't spell, so thank goodness for spell check. And then in the description, we're going to say the VAS is a 10-item questionnaire that asks about pain on a Likert scale of 1 being no pain and 10 being the worst pain ever. So what we're doing here is we are just describing what the scale is that we are using. So that's what you want to do here. You want to just add any kind of description that you can to define the scale, the score, or anything that will help to clarify what the actual outcome measure is. The time frame, we need to be very clear about when this is being collected. So we want to say an exact time point. We don't want to say throughout the study. That will not fly. We want to say up to 10 weeks. So for the time frame, you need to remember to use hours, minutes, seconds, years, whatever it is, but it has to be a concrete time frame. Now, you could always have multiple time frames if you're looking at a change. So for example, if we're looking at a change, we would have to put change in the title. So we would say change in pain as measured by the VAS, and then we would, in the time frame, we are going to list any times that we're going to ask about pain. So we're going to ask about pain at baseline and 12 weeks. So just a little note here. If you have multiple time points in your time frame, you have to have change in the title. Okay, so then that's going to be our outcome measure. So then the next and then you have to add any secondary outcomes if there are listed in the protocol. This is where you can add any exploratory or tertiary outcomes, but again, this is not required. So then next we're going to go to eligibility, and then we'll just put the sex, the gender, the age limits. You have to put a max and a minimum. So you would put years. You can, do whatever you want for the max and minimum depending on your protocol. You can say NA if there are no limits. Okay, and then how it accepts healthy volunteers, yes or no, and then any eligibility criteria. For this, just a little note that to format correctly, make sure you put a dash and a space before every criteria that you list. Overall contacts, this is required that you have at least a central contact person with the first name, last name, phone number, and email. Those are what is required. That you can also list a central backup person, but this is not required. So for the contact person, we want to list anybody that has access and knowledge about the study. It doesn't necessarily have to be the PI. It can be a study coordinator or anybody that is really active and knows about the study in case somebody finds this study on the public site and reaches out. You need to add the study official. Make sure that you always add the PI that is listed in IRB. So that would be the first person that you would list. You can add any additional co-Is if needed, but the first person to be listed needs to be the PI of record with IRB. And then you're going to put the locations, and this is just anywhere that you are recruiting. It's going to ask for the country, and then it's going to ask for the city and state, and then where you're actually recruiting. So you can actually add as many locations as needed. Next is the IPD sharing statement. This is the individual participant level data that they're going to ask if you're going to share. This is required to be answered, so don't put undecided. You have to have an IPD sharing statement approved by the IRB to push yes. So if you do not have an IRB, or if you do not have an IPD sharing statement at the time of submission, just press no, and then you can update to yes later if needed. If you do have an IPD sharing statement, you need to put in the description of what you're planning to share, how long you're planning to share it. All of this information will be required. This is not aggregate data sets. Again, this is individual participant level data. The next, we have the references page. You can list any citations, links. If you have a link to your lab or anything like that, you can add them here. And that's the record. And once you finish, it's going to tell you that you have some errors because I didn't fill out some things. And then you can go back and see exactly what you need to put and what you need to change to be able to complete this record. So right now we're going to go back to the completion dates because we didn't enter those. So the primary completion date is the last date of data collection for your primary outcome measure. The study completion date is the last date of data collection for your secondary outcome measures or any AEs. So for this record, we only had one outcome measure, and it was pain measured by the VAS at baseline in 12 weeks. So our completion dates are going to be the last date that data was collected at that 12-week visit for participants. So if we plan to start in June, let's say we're going to recruit for a year. And so then that gets us to June 2024, and then we're going to go 12 weeks out from June. So June, July, August, we'll put September. So we can always do it like this, and then we'll just kind of best guesstimate of when we plan to be finished with data collection only, not analysis or any other thing like that, just data collection. This date can be altered as necessary. We want to just make sure that we are providing accurate information. And this is because results are going to be due within 1 year of your completion dates. And that's why it's very important if results are due, of course. But if you are required to report results, it's going to go based off of the completion dates. So we're going to want to make sure that these dates are as accurate as possible. When the last person comes in, when you have the last participant contact, that's when you're going to do the completion dates. Once you have everything filled out and you have all of the errors finished, this entry complete button will turn green, and then you'll just press this entry complete button and it'll go on to the approved. The responsible party is who is responsible for approving and releasing it to ClinicalTrials.gov for their review and approval. So once ClinicalTrials.gov gets it, they will review the record. For new registrations, it's anywhere up to 10 days, and they will either come back with comments if they have anything that they would like for you to change or reformat or anything like that. If not, they will just assign that NCT number. If you have to report results, please note that it can take up to 45 days for ClinicalTrials.gov to review results. So those take a little bit longer. If you have any questions, you can reach out to your PRS administrator at your institution, or I am also available for any questions or comments. My name is Rachel.Massey at uhhospitals.org. Thank you so much.